today. So with all of that out the way, if everyone's ready at home, then I'll hand over to you, Wendy.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Well, I hope you're all relaxed because we are going to travel to a different land this morning. The story is about a very well-known trickster, as I mentioned, Anansi the spider. Some of you may have heard some stories or read some stories about Anansi. Here is my painting of him. A very friendly, happy character. In the stories, it is said that he was transformed into a spider by Niame, the sky god, for being far too boastful. But he's known for his wisdom and his cunning and his trickery. So let us begin. There are hundreds of stories swirling above our heads. I plucked one from the sky, and this is what the story said. I'd like to invite you all to come way, way back in time with me to a distant land. For you see, once upon a long, long time ago, there lived a king who ruled along the golden coast of West Africa. And this king was wealthy with riches beyond your imagination. He loved to collect unusual and golden objects. His palace was lined with golden furniture. He would wear golden jewelry, chains around his neck, and golden armbands and golden headbands. Why, even his own soldiers would carry golden shields. But there was one thing that this king really secretly wanted, that he just couldn't get hold of. And that was the beautiful golden bowl, an exquisite round bowl that belonged to Tiger. Now, he knew he couldn't get hold of this bowl because Tiger ruled in the forest, and he had his own golden treasures, which he kept for himself. And no one dared to cross Tiger. Now, also in the same village, the same region as the king, lived our friend, the trickster, Anansi. Anansi was known to everyone as quite clever and wise. In fact, even the king's own advisors would go to Anansi if they needed some help. And the king didn't really like that much. But Anansi was fed up with just being known to be wise and clever. He wanted treasures. He wanted riches and power for himself. So this is how he set about doing it. I'd like you to imagine a really hot, blazing, baking hot day. Anansi went down to the marketplace and he positioned himself in the middle of the market where everybody could see him as they were hustling and bustling by. And then he began to boast. Can I wonder, could you imagine what your boasting face would look like? What do you look like when you're really, really trying to boast and brag? Can you imagine his face? He was so boastful, saying how he knew everything. He could help anyone. There was nothing that he couldn't do. In fact, he was so clever. He could get anything for the king without even knowing what it is that the king wants. Imagine such a boast as that. Well, some of the king's advisors were strolling past in the market, and they overheard Anansi bragging and boasting, and they rushed back and told the king. You can imagine how furious the king was. Anansi was saying he is even more clever than me. Bring him here to me right this instant. And so Anansi was summoned to the king, and the trickster, well, he was planning this all along. He came to the king and bowed his head respectfully, so low that his face was almost on the ground. And the king asked him, "Were you boasting and bragging that you were even more clever than I?" And Anansi said, "Yes, yes, my king, but put me to the test. Anything you want, test me, I can get it." And the king thought this was a wonderful opportunity to get rid of this boastful Anansi. "I will put you to the test," he said. "I will give you a challenge, and I will not tell you what it is that I want. I will only tell my advisors, and you have 3 days to get it. If you succeed, Anansi, I will give you 1/3 of my treasures and wealth." Anansi's eyes were just popping open with excitement. "But if you fail," said the king, "you will be banished, sent away from the village, never allowed to return again." Well, the king did not think Anansi would accept such a difficult challenge, but Anansi did. "Whatever you want, my king, I will do it. I will be back maybe in less than 2 days." And he scuttled off. And the king laughed to himself, rubbed his hands with glee, because he thought now he had gotten rid of Anansi. He secretly wanted Tiger's golden bowl. And if Tiger did not kill him, well, surely he would fail and be banished. Oh, Anansi the trickster didn't worry. He strolled home and thought, "I need a plan. I need an idea to find out what the king secretly wants. What do you think he could do? How could Anansi find out this king's secret wish?" He paced up and down and he scratched his head and he thought, well, I could maybe try and sneak into the palace and hide in a corner and listen, or maybe ask one of the king's advisors. Well, finally, an idea came to him. He decided to get some help from his friends. Everyone in the village owed Anansi a favor. He journeyed into the forest, to the kingdom of the birds, where all the most beautiful, colorful, tropical birds lay. There were birds of all colors and sizes. And Anansi called out to them all, "Birds, I need your help. You all owe me a favor." Well, the birds fluttered down in all of their glory, their long tails shining, and they did indeed owe Anansi a favor. He told them he was on a secret mission from the king. "I need one of your feathers from each of you," he said, "for my very important secret mission." And the birds agreed. They each took out one of their feathers. And Anansi gathered all of their feathers. He had so many feathers from the birds that he was able to stick them onto his arms, onto his head, onto his legs, onto his body. He had so many feathers that he was disguised as a most magnificent, colorful, beautiful bird. Can you guess what Anansi's plan was? He took himself with all of these wonderful feathers and began to flap his arms. He flapped higher and higher, so high that his feet began to rise off the ground. He flapped longer and louder and larger, and soon Anansi could fly. And he flew all the way over to the king's palace. When he was there, Anansi perched himself on the branches of a large baobab tree that was sitting in the king's courtyard. He positioned himself so that everybody could see him with all of his magnificent crown of feathers and his long tails, and he was swishing his body like this and that. And the king was down below with his advisors. He looked up and he said, what is that bird? What is the name of that bird?" And everyone looked and they saw Anansi shining with all of these feathers, but they didn't recognize it at all. They'd never seen such a wonderful bird. And then the king yelled out, What a shame I've given Anansi the challenge of getting me the golden bowl from Tiger. Otherwise, I could have made him tell me the name of that bird. He would have known it. Capture it. I want it. And so the advisors jumped up and they grabbed a net to capture the golden bird. But Anansi, the trickster, was too swift. He fluttered his wings and he swiftly flew away. He went home and he rid himself, got off all of the feathers, because now he knew that the challenge was to get the golden bowl. He packed up some food for his journey to find Tiger. He wrapped some baked and fried chicken and plantains in banana leaf, put everything into a fresh cloth, and he ventured into the forest. Anansi knew that Tiger lived somewhere towards the edge of the village. And as he made his way strolling through the sunshine, after a while in the heat, he grew tired and hungry. So he sat down by a stream to eat his food. And as he was eating and the water was trickling by, Anansi heard the fishes in the water call out to him. They were hungry and they begged Anansi for some food. Please feed us, Anansi. We are hungry. Give us some of your food. Now, we all know that Anansi is a little bit greedy. He doesn't like to share his food. But he thought, I might need the fish's help later. So he took out some of his jollof rice and he sprinkled it into the water. And he said to the fish, now remember, you owe me a favor. You must help me if I return back this way. And then he packed up his belongings and Anansi ventured deeper and deeper, further and further into the forest. By now, the sun was going down. It was getting darker and he was getting tired and a little bit worried. He didn't know where Tiger was. When suddenly he felt something bite him on his feet. Ouch! Oh, Anansi looked down and he saw a swarming army of little red fire ants all swarming around his feet. But they were just hungry and they begged Anansi for some food. Now, again, he didn't really want to share his food. The trickster likes to keep them all to himself, but he thought, I might need the ants' help later. So he sprinkled some sugar on the ground and told them, remember to help me if I need your help later. Well, after that, Anansi ventured further and further into the forest. It was nighttime now, and he was tired and hungry and really wanted to rest when he heard a voice through the bushes. And he saw two eyes peering in the darkness. It was Tiger. Now, Tiger wondered what Anansi was doing in this part of the forest that belonged to him. But Anansi the trickster said, oh, Tiger, I am so glad to see you. I have lost my way. Perhaps I can stay at your place for the night. Now, Tiger didn't really trust the trickster, but he thought, let me see what he is up to. So he welcomed Anansi in and he offered him some of his food. And he saw that Anansi wasn't eating. What is wrong? Said Tiger. Why do you not eat all of this wonderful food that I have laid out for you as my guest? And Anansi said, you know, I just find it really hard to eat without my golden bowl. I just didn't bring it with me. Do you have a golden bowl that I can maybe eat from? Now, Tiger thought this was a little bit unusual, but he was not worried. He thought that was fine. He would lend Anansi his golden bowl. And so Tiger brought out the exquisite golden bowl that the king secretly wanted. Anansi put all of his food inside and he tucked into his meal with Tiger. And when his bowl was clean and empty, he said, Tiger, thank you for your hospitality. Now I must wash my dish and be a good guest for you. And when Tiger's back was turned, Anansi pretended to go and wash his bowl, when secretly he tiptoed out of his house and ran. He ran through the forest, fleeing with the golden bowl. Well, Tiger wondered what was taking Anansi so long, and in no time at all, he realized that Anansi had stolen from him and fled. He began to chase and chase through the forest, running, looking for tracks and signs of where Anansi had gone. Now, Anansi had now gotten to the part of the forest where the ants were, and he called out to them, "Please, remember you owe me a favor. Slow up, Tiger's feet." Anansi carried on running, and Tiger almost caught up with him when suddenly he felt all of these red ants crawling all over his tiger body and tickling him from head to toe. Oh, under his arms, under his legs, under his chin. And Tiger just couldn't stop laughing. He laughed and laughed and laughed. But by the time he'd gotten rid of the ants, Anansi had now reached the small stream that he'd passed earlier. He rushed up to the water and he called out to the river. He called out to the stream and the fishes. "Remember, you owe me a favor. Please help me slow up, Tiger." Well, the fishes were ready to help. They told Anansi to jump into the water. And he did, carrying the bowl and trying to swim. And the fishes carried him all the way down the stream towards the village. And as Tiger approached, chasing closer and closer towards Anansi, the stream began to swirl and change with its current. Can you imagine a stream getting faster and faster and swirling round and round? It swirled around so much, so quickly, that it began to overflow into a river. And the river was so deep that Tiger could not cross it. Anansi had escaped and gotten away with Tiger's golden bowl. Tiger was so furious. He roared a tiger roar out into the forest. "I will catch you another day, Anansi," he said. Well, Anansi strolled home carrying his bowl. He got changed into some clean clothes. He had a little rest, a nap, and then he went to the king's palace and presented the king with Tiger's golden bowl. The king was so surprised. He could not believe that Anansi had passed the unknown challenge. He took the bowl, but then he said to Anansi, "Before I give you 1/3 of my wealth and kingdom, I want you to tell me the name of a beautiful, colourful bird that I saw flying over my kingdom." And Anansi the trickster did not really admit that it was him in disguise. Instead, he said that the bird was called Sawanti Asankofi, which means in the language of the Akan people, "If at first you do not hear, go back and listen again." Well, the king was most surprised, but trusted the wise Anansi. He handed over some of his treasures, and Anansi was wealthy in gold that day. But he spent many, many more days hiding from Tiger. But that is a story for another day. Thank you for listening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that tale.